So is everybody invigorated after lunch? Did everybody get enough to eat? Is everybody enjoying the program so far? All right, so am I. So am I. And I am delighted to have the opportunity to introduce my good friend, Ed Thompson. In fact, Ed doesn't have enough time to tell you everything on his mind. So I'm going to do a little bit of the background for you. I'm going to let you know who this guy is, because Ed Thompson is a remarkable man. How many of you have seen the video, Ed Thompson, a Remarkable Man? Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough, I can tell you right now. Okay, Ed Thompson was born back in, oh my God, history isn't recorded back that far, Ed. In Elroy, Wisconsin. His father ran a small grocery, and I wish he had time to tell you all the stories about what he learned about business working in that small hometown Elroy grocery store. But I don't think I need to tell you all. That's what we need. We need legislators that have been there, done that, worked for themselves, and made payroll. It's a whole different breed of cat. In school, Ed won his 7th grade spelling bee. Okay, this is an intellectual we've got here. Ed briefly attended the University of Wisconsin at Madison before he did something way more important. What do you suppose that was? He served our country in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War. And let me tell you, folks, I wasn't there, but I saw the movies. That was no picnic. Ed has 4 children. Anne Marie Green is a public school teacher in Richmond, Virginia. Kristen Beth Ashford is a state university professor in Lexington, Kentucky. Alan Edward Chip Thompson is a public school teacher in Toma. And Joshua Thompson is an attorney with the nonprofit law firm in Sacramento, California. Well, now what does that tell you? We got a guy who's a success. I don't know if any of you could not agree that a parent who has 4 successful children is a success. Don't let any politician tell you any otherwise. Ed has shoveled asphalt on a road crew. He's plowed snow in the country, welded in the cab shop of the Janesville Auto Assembly Line. He's worked on the Oxford Federal Prison, and he's competed quite successfully, I might add, in Golden Gloves boxing. And if you ever get a chance to shake hands with Ed Thompson, I think you'll figure out in a big hurry why. This guy's hands are like bear claws, and you wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of them. This is the kind of power we need in our state legislature, I'll tell you. I understand he was a professional gambler, but it doesn't show up in his online bio. But I think he learned a thing or two probably in Las Vegas during those times. And in 1990, he bought the building on Toma's Main Street that would become Ed's Teepee Supper Club. How many of you have been to Ed's Teepee Supper Club? A lot more of you than have seen his videos. And I think it tells you a little bit more about who Ed Thompson, the remarkable man, is. In fact, since 1993, Ed has hosted Toma's annual free Thanksgiving dinner at the TP there. People of Toma come together to provide meals to those less fortunate on Thanksgiving. Last Thanksgiving, they served over 1,200 people in downtown Toma. Now, something else that I wrote that's between the lines, something that doesn't show up in the bio online about Ed, is right about this time in his career, Ed was running his supper club, just getting it going as the entrepreneur that he was, when law enforcement walked in and raided the place. Now, what was the terrible, heinous crime that he inflicted on the people of Toma? He had a couple of nickel video poker machines. For that, they took every penny out of the till, took the video machines and busted up the place. By that I mean dispersed the crowd. There was a big party going on at the time. It's not something that a small business person can withstand. Any of you that own small businesses know what I'm talking about. Ed was elected mayor of Tomah, a city of over 8,000 people, in April of 2000, defeating a two-term incumbent. As mayor, Ed worked to shape up Tomah's financial situation. He helped reduce the city's debt from over $4 million without resorting to extending the expected property tax hike. As mayor, Ed also championed and oversaw the creation of a senior and disabled program at a minimum cost per year. And the senior center was open with no cost to the taxpayers. After serving as mayor for 2 years, Ed ran for governor of Wisconsin. Now, some of you might know that campaign. For those of you that don't know that campaign, this is going to be an eye-opening presentation for you, because you're going to find out why, as a libertarian, in 2002, Ed was able to garner 10.5% statewide. That's tough to do as a libertarian, let me tell you. I've never had more than, I think, 1.5%, and I've run 4 times. Following his run for governor, Ed removed himself from politics. He was the subject of a documentary titled A Remarkable Man. That's that video I strongly recommend that you take a look at, which detailed his life and his run for governor. He remained removed from politics until 2005, when voters spontaneously drafted this guy on election day as an unregistered write-in candidate and elected him to serve on the Tomah City Council. I mean, that's a lot of popularity. You get written in when you didn't even run. After you'd run before, they knew who he was. Having not run for the position, Ed was reluctant to accept, but the overwhelming support he received led him back into public office. And then as mayor, Ed again worked to control government spending. Ed has helped ensure, including by vetoing a proposed city budget, that Tomah's residential and business property tax rates decreased year after year in his term for mayor. How many of you people have seen your property taxes go down? Ed did it in Tomah. Ed continues to own and manage the TP Supper Club, and when Ed's not on the campaign trail, he can be found most days at the TP running his business or performing a lead role in a play at the community theater across the street. I'm telling you, I've gotten to know Ed in his campaigns. I've gotten to know Ed by seeing how he interacts with his customers and the people that volunteer on his campaign. And this is the real deal, folks. We have a chance, a good chance, to displace an entrenched Democrat in the 31st District with a principled, Constitution-loving candidate on the Republican Party that can turn the control of this state back over to the people. Let's give a warm welcome to Ed Thompson.
Thank you, Tim, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Ken Van Doren, for the wonderful job you're doing here with the Campaign for Liberty, and thank all of you for coming. I want you to know how much I appreciate this and opportunity to speak to you. I love freedom, and I want to live free. Free from the chains of excessive taxes, spending, and debt that the government twists tighter and tighter around our arms and legs every year. Having real freedom means respecting the right of the members of your community to live their lives and run their businesses as they see fit, so long as they respect the equal rights of others. Together we can gain respect for the freedom that each individual merits. Just because he's alive, because he lives, because he breathes, because he thinks, and because his family and his friends and the members of his community. We are at a turning point. Dr. Paul calls it a revolution. I don't know what to call it, but I know it when I see it. I feel it in my bones. My neighbors in Wisconsin, they feel it too. They're telling me that they've been pushed too far by government. That grows and grows no matter what we do. Even with our severe economic troubles and job losses, the government taxes and spends and borrows and spends way too much. People know this is wrong, and they know it needs to change. And it will end if we put the hard work in to make it happen. Now, I know some of you quite well. It's always good to be among friends. My name is Ed Thompson. I'm mayor of the city of Tomah, and I'm a candidate for the Wisconsin State Senate in the 31st District. Many of you know me best because of my 2002 campaign for Wisconsin governor. And in that campaign, I campaigned on a platform that across the board argued for less government and respect for individual liberty. Even 8 years later, new people tell me almost every day that campaign introduced them to the important principles of liberty. As mayor of Tomah, I've helped show that these goals are consistent with improving services in the community. Though I love being mayor, and I really do, I'll be stepping down in a couple weeks so I can concentrate full time on my campaign for Wisconsin State Senate. And as a state senator, I pledge in advance common sense in Wisconsin state government. Common sense, not educated sense. There's a big difference. I pledge to remind the people running state government that they work for us, not us for them. And I pledge to challenge the politicians in Madison, Democrats and Republicans alike, whenever they seek to impose an expensive government boondoggle, sacrifice our liberty to increase state government's power, or put special interest above the interests of the people of Wisconsin. Or I also pledge to work with the people of any party or political persuasion when they are promoting an improvement in state government. But I'm not here this afternoon to deliver a campaign speech. I welcome anyone who's interested in my campaign to go to my website, edthompson.com. No, I'm here this afternoon to share my story about how I joined the revolution. The two-room school in Elroy, where I grew up, had a very small library. I think I read every book in it, some of them more than once. Luckily, that small library had several Jack London novels. Those novels captured my imagination, and their depictions of hard work and fierce independence, they spoke to me. In particular, I read Jack London's book, The Sea Wolf. I don't know if any of you ever read it. You should. It spoke to me. I read that book 3 times. In The Sea Wolf, the leading character is a man named Wolf Larson, a man of incredible strength. He could take a firm potato and squeeze it with his bare hands, and the remnants would squirt out like water out of a sponge. And he was an independent man who ran his own ship on the high seas. And he was an inspiration to me. In grade school, I read just about every book on Andrew Jackson that I could get my hands on. In particular, Marcus James' The Life of Andrew Jackson. I was excited by Jackson's bravery. As a he was captured 13 years old in the Revolutionary War, and an officer told him to polish his boots, and he said, "Polish your own boots." And the officer hit him across the face with a sword that he carried the scar to his grave. I loved his horsemanship, later his military brilliance when he took on the British military army at the Battle of New Orleans with a ragtag of frontiersmen. With time, I also began to understand the importance of Jackson's important fight against the Second Bank of the United States. And I also recognized his faults in his action toward American Indians and his decision to hang volunteers who wanted to leave on the way to the Battle of New Orleans. But my greatest example of a strong, independent man was not someone I just read about in a novel or in a history book. My father was a tremendous influence in my life. He enjoyed life to the fullest, and he was so rigid in his determination to do the right thing. He would never waste money, but he was kind, and he helped many people. He would never cheat someone to get ahead himself. And I thought back to my father's influence over the 20 years since I've owned the Teepee Supper Club in Tomah. 20 years ago, I bought a building on Main Street that many advised to turn down. It had been shut down for 2 years, and I was in bankruptcy when I bought it from the bank. Now that building and 4 others on Main Street comprise the Teepee Supper Club. My experience in building the teepee reminds me of my father's experience in building his grocery store. My dad had so little money when he opened that store right before World War II that he didn't have enough money to put the front door on, so he'd sleep in the back room until he got enough money to do it. Now I employ 38 people at the teepee. And in the beginning, there was just me. I remember the first meal that, after I was open for 3 months, we decided to open the kitchen up, and I hired a young man, Judd Riggs. We went to the grocery store and bought some hamburger. We made some hamburgers and took them to all the barber shops around Tomah. And, you know, because we figured the barbers would tell everybody they had a good burger, maybe they'd send somebody to the teepee. We went and bought some 4 T-bone steaks that first night, and we did. Finally, we had some people come in, and we sold all 4 T-bones. One of the ladies says, "What kind of dressing do you have with your salad?" I said, "French," because that's all we had. The teepee is a business, but for me, it's more of a community gathering. It's a place where people from all walks of life feel welcome. We have their weddings and their 90th birthday parties and their confirmations and high school graduations. Having owned and managed a small business for the last 2 decades, I experienced firsthand the devastating effects of Wisconsin state government's excessive taxing and spending. Each dollar of taxes my business pays to the state government is a dollar I cannot spend to better my employees, or bring in new workers, or pay for materials to do some remodeling, or donate to charity, the charity of my choice. When we pay more taxes to support the wasteful state government, the wealth and well-being of ourselves, our families, and our communities suffer. My experience has taught me that a new government proposal to save the world hardly ever works, and it almost always costs more than projected. So anybody comes to me with a new program as a state senator, I'll say, which one of the old ones are you going to eliminate that didn't work? The hidden cost of government spending is that money spent has to come from somewhere. And we know where it comes from. It comes from you and me and our neighbors. Usually the best thing the government can do is step out of the way and reduce taxes and spending so individual families and communities can create jobs and expand prosperity and advance charity. More than 15 years ago, before I managed the Teepee Supper Club, I joined the revolution, at least in the way I thought about politics. In the late 1970s, while on a very rare vacation, I read Robert J. Ringer's book, Restoring the American Dream. I couldn't put it down. The book helped me organize for my general views on politics and open my eyes to a consistent, logical point of view. The book did not move me away from my apolitical life, but it did provide the base for building my political philosophy. At that point, I'd been living the hard-working life at the core of Wisconsin's character. I got my first job in 2nd grade sweeping out that country school. We got $2 a month. Believe me, that wasn't bad money back then. You know. You could buy 20 candy bars for $1. I was a high roller, let me tell you. I started working at my father's grocery store in the 4th grade. I got a job shoveling blacktop for Matthews Road Construction the day I graduated from high school. I left college to join the Navy during the Vietnam War. I welded in the cab shop at the General Motors auto plant in Janesville, plowed snow for the county, and I worked 5 years in a federal prison in Oxford. And through it all, my passion was boxing. I loved to box. I boxed in many Golden Glove fights, many tough man fights. Had my last fight in Superior, Wisconsin when I was 40 years old. I remember I came back from the 2nd round. I was doing pretty good. And my coach says, "How you doing, Ed?" I said, "I don't know, you tell me." He said, "How many fingers I got?" I said, "I can't see your hand." I went on and finished the fight, but Jim said, "That's your last fight, Ed." So I kind of quit after that. Lots of times through hard work, I had enough money just to put food on the table and pay the electric bill. And through all those years, I had a fundamental understanding of the importance of freedom. And after reading Robert Ringer's book, I had to further refine that understanding. Still, I never felt the urge to become involved in politics. I prided myself in being the most apolitical person in the world. Politics was a corrupt club of career politicians, and I couldn't stand them, and I wanted to stay as far away from them as possible. For 52 years, I lived an apolitical life. Then came that snowy night on December 13th, 1997. Busiest night of the year. We had a railroad Christmas party going on. Friday night fish fry. On that day, armed cops came busting through the front door, 4 of them, raided me because of the result of a sting operation that was going on video poker machines. The police took the machines. They took all the money out of the dining room till. They took all the money out of the bar till. They raided 43 other bars in Monroe County that night. I did not have enough money to meet payroll or to pay the bills. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was devastated. I faced $40,000 in fines and 8 years in prison. At first, I fought the charges, and the government lawyers, they couldn't seat a jury willing to convict me. 69 people said, "No, I agree with Ed," and they walked out. The district attorney told the judge, "I'll find a jury," and he went into the streets and into the senior centers, and they came back and they said they didn't agree with him. And so in the end, they had to drop the charges. Confronting the government head-on awoke in me a desire to learn more about politics and to make a difference. I encouraged a young man fresh out of law school to run for the district attorney against the incumbent who led the raid and who was chief prosecutor. I campaigned hard for that young man, Dan Hellman, and he won the election. Since then, I've been elected as mayor of Tacoma twice, once in 2000 and once in 2008, both against multi-term incumbents. And of course, I also spent a year and a half of my life campaigning my heart out in the 2002 Wisconsin governor's race. I know some of you here today became politically active because you came face to face with government out of control, like I did at the teepee on that snowy night in December. And there's nothing like a hard kick in the seat of the pants to get you motivated. But in some ways, I'm more impressed by the people who've joined the revolution for liberty, and mainly out of their reading and thinking about government. Many of the people involved in my campaign for liberty groups here in Wisconsin, around the country, and even around the world owe their political activism and persuasive powers to just one man, Dr. Ron Paul. A member of the United States House of Representatives from Texas, Though I joined the revolution before I knew much about Dr. Paul, since my government race, I have closely followed his work. I've read many of his speeches and both of his recent books, Revolution, a Manifesto, and In the Fed. I endorsed Dr. Paul early in 2008's presidential campaign, and I regularly informed people of my support throughout his campaign. In my state Senate campaign, I'm running as a Ron Paul Republican. On a platform that across the board argues for less government and more respect for individual liberty. In interviews with media throughout the Wisconsin State Journal, the Wisconsin Radio Network, Wisconsin Eye Television, and several YouTube videos, I've praised Dr. Paul for supporting the Constitution every time. I thank Dr. Paul for the many years he's devoted to upholding the Constitution and explaining the philosophy of liberty. And I thank the members of your organization who are doing the same on the local level. And I'm particularly thankful for the hard work of the Eau Claire Area Campaign for Liberty. Along with the University of Wisconsin area college students, they hosted an event where Grover Norquist witnessed me signing ATR's No Tax Pledge. The pledge says that as a state senator, I will oppose and vote against any and all efforts to raise taxes. So many of the college students at that event told me that when they graduate, they expect to leave Wisconsin because there's no jobs. That's a disgrace. Imagine how much better things would be in Wisconsin if all the politicians had signed and lived up to that no increase pledge. Signing a pledge to oppose all tax increases is an easy choice for me. I made an even stronger pledge to my constituents that I will oppose all tax and fee increases and introduce and support legislation that will significantly reduce Wisconsin taxes and wasteful spending. In closing, I want to reiterate a strong conviction I share with Dr. Paul. I believe that reducing the size and cost of government will improve our lives. Our state government needs to stop wasting our tax money on monitoring, restricting, and punishing our peaceful, personal, and financial decisions. Having real freedom means respecting the rights of the members of your community to live their lives as they see fit. Business as they choose, as long as they respect the equal rights of others. Together, we can stop the expansive and destructive expansion of the state government and the government's controls over our personal and financial decisions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you.